Every cause carries its effect within it, and every effect has the power to return to its cause. The current that lights a room can also be born from the light itself. And similarly, if a physical energy can produce electricity, then the electrical energy can produce physical energy. The laws of nature are reversible by their own nature itself. And this is the secret symmetry of creation. A young man, a working man, maybe in his late 20s, started his career in the corporate world, just like any other young man, with the dreams of achieving big in this world of big companies, where a man goes in the morning at maybe 6, 7, 8 a.m. in the morning, as soon as the sun rises, and comes out exactly when the sun goes down. You see, to me it seems like sun does quite opposite what he does. When he enters these concrete buildings, so-called the corporate, the big companies, sun decides to come out. And when he leaves, these bondages of working from maybe 9 to 10 hours a day, the sun goes back. That's the reality in the world lives. Moving from hand to mouth, and these giants, the concrete giants, the big companies, makes them work and sell their own products to the man working in different of these buildings, in different corporates. And this is how world works. This particular working man, after working quite some time, in quite opposition to the direction of sun, for quite couple of months, exhausted, but somehow he was able to convince himself it is perfectly alright. Everyone does it. And it's the very nature of life for them as well. While the owners of these big giants and maybe the companies breaks the banks, the working class breaks the bread. It's perfectly alright. One day, this late 20 man begins to imagine. And he imagines, how do these people working in the upper management, maybe the corporate guys, the management guys, how do they feel? They have a lot of perks to begin with. They're getting the relatively easy part of the jobs, and the various kind of perks comes with it. There are plenty of time at hand to focus on themselves, which that person has not any kind of an idea about it, with no such hectic targets to achieve whatsoever. The newcomers usually have very hectic life in the corporate, and it comes with more kind of a micromanagement part of it. So this particular man, while standing in the middle of the floor, tried to feel it, how it feels to be the management person, who as per the hierarchy, or you can say the ranks of the corporate rules, right? And they rule over the working floor with the relatively easy life. And as soon as he imagined, he felt so at ease, like all the pressure and the weight of the work has lifted off his shoulder. Well, he was working in the bottom ranks where all the pressure exists. And if you're carrying a bag which weighs approximately, say, 20 kilograms on your back, maybe for a couple of the months, and suddenly you decide to take it off, well, if you ask me, for a moment, it would give me immense pleasure and relief, and surprising somehow, it would be a completely new feeling for me after being burdened for a couple of months. And that's exactly that man felt. Exactly the same. While standing in the middle of the working floor, he exactly felt the same. He felt how it would I feel if I am the management professional in this company. And it didn't stop there. And exactly in the few weeks of the company opened a new position that they're hiring for the management professionals. They're hiring for the management professional and they're ready to take in. But it was open for those only who have spent some time in the company and have passed certain criteria, who are permanent in the companies. Well, this man met no criteria whatsoever. He was relatively new, just few months old, not more than that, and was not even permanent in the company. Well, to get the permanent tag in the corporate world, you have a different set of criteria. So actually this man didn't meet any kind of a criteria whatsoever you can ever imagine. But he did the same. So he applied for this particular position at corporate. And even after getting remarks from his fellow employees, maybe from his friends, he received many remarks, and all the reason why he should not apply for these kind of a maybe job opportunities. He is relatively new. It's completely reasonable thing to do for him. So anyways, he applied. And in that particular position, the process of interview, there were 6 employees who applied basically, and he was the only one who didn't meet the criteria whatsoever. It was basically his journey was completely new and altogether new in this particular company. And on the day when the interview began with the owner, the CEO of the company itself, the very first employee, the very first shortlisted candidate out of 6 spent 2-3 hours in the interview. Well, people somehow feel that the person having high rank in the corporates are somehow better or maybe of high value. And the people somehow together bow in front of them, not physically, but maybe in the mind itself, keeping very high image of the people with the ranks, as they consider some kind of a god. He's a very high value man. The people with ranks, they are human too. Just as they are, the man saw employee literally shivering in the fear. Once the 2-3 hour interview was going on, the rest of the 5, apart from this man, the rest of the 4 were completely shivering in their shoes. We humans have tendency to bow down. Be it our parents, the grandparents, the man of political influence, the man of administrative influence. People somehow treat them as some kind of a gods. They completely disregard the fact that they're human too. Look at the media. As soon as some political man or the man of influence joins the stage, everyone starts to bow. Maybe not physically, but mentally. Their tone softens, their shoulder loosens, and maybe curved inwards, as if they are bowing down in front of some kind of a god they venerate. And after the interview of the very first employee, 3 backed out. They couldn't stand the pressure of sitting 3 hours in front of the CEO. They have that kind of a mental image of a CEO. And it left with the 3, including this man, who once felt what would it feel like if I am the management person, right into the middle of the floor. Well, it was Friday. And 2 weeks passed by. Only 3 men are left, including this particular man that we are talking about. And he didn't even got a chance to be maybe sit in front of the CEO. His turn was pending. And suddenly after 2 weeks, they received a letter which said the final round would be happening on the Monday. And by then, one more person who was contending for this particular position left out. And in the end, this person and the person who initially gave 2-3 hours of interview was left. And by the Monday comes, the person who gave earlier the interview with 2-3 hours while sitting in front of the CEO, he fell ill. The only person remained in the process was this person who once felt. Later, he was proclaimed as a management professional. He passed the interview. He got the position, surpassing all kind of a criteria. He didn't even qualify to sit even the process of the interview. He became the exact person which he felt while standing in the middle of the working floor. He received the email the next day stating he became the exact person he once felt. So I would like to say it once again. Every cause carries its effect within it, and every effect has the power to return to its cause. The current that lights a room can also be born from the light itself. And similarly, if physical energy can produce electricity, then the electrical energy can produce physical energy. The laws of nature are reversible by their own nature itself. And this is the secret symmetry of creation. And if somehow I can add to your knowledge about life itself, the psychological drama of life itself, so that you will now know more before you have even listened to this podcast. And if it is so, then I would have succeeded in this. But no one, may I say once again, no one can convince you otherwise unless you experience it. And the story which I told you here today about this guy in his late 20s, securing a very management position when the odds are against of him, when the fact said he cannot make it. It's not a hearsay. nor this story is something that someone has told me. It is the story which I have experienced. It is a literal story of me. I was that guy who was aspiring for the management position, despite the facts said so, which are completely against it. So may I say again, if physical energy can produce electricity, then electrical energy can produce physical energy. The laws of nature are reversible by their own nature itself. And if wind energy can create electrical energy, then electrical energy can create wind energy. So similarly, if an event can create an emotion or the feeling in your life, then the emotion or the feeling can create a particular event in your life. The laws are always inversely transformable, because every cause carries its effect within it, and every effect has the power to return to its cause. And this is what I am particularly teaching the world about it in this particular podcast. Life is not what your senses dictates to be. It is more profound than that. And I can tell you unnumbered stories from my life of the same nature, where the facts were standing completely opposite and opposing me. When the things didn't make sense, when the things I did was not at all completely reasonable. The man's arrogance is limited to his own senses only. And the arrogance stops the man to go beyond his own senses. And a man trapped in his senses gets dictated by the senses itself. And when he becomes the slaves to his own senses, blaming this or that event of his life is the cause of misfortune in his life, not knowing these events which befell upon him was once drawn upon him by himself only. But the man do not know. Being slave to the senses, he blames people to bring all kind of a misfortune into his life, not knowing he himself is the culprit of the phenomena of life, which he does not know, which is the law of life itself. So as stated in Mandukya Karika chapter 2, verse 16, if I can transcribe it to you, it simply says, chapter 2, verse 16, we imagine ourselves as a separate being. From that entire world of inner thoughts and outer object arises. What we call reality is colored by our own memory and conditioning. Do you hear that? What we call reality is colored by our own memory and conditioning. The world in which you live, the state in which you are, is objectified by your own imagination, which depends upon your own senses and reasoning of the senses. For me, when I stood right in the middle of the floor that day, when I dreamt of having a management job, my senses dictated, I'm just a normal working class man. And I've just started my career in this particular company. I was very recent. I was a greenhorn. This was my senses dictated me. And my reason dictated to become this particular management professional, I need certain amount of experience. For now, I had only few months. The reasoning mind said it's completely foolish to dream right now. Maybe in the future you can, but right now it's completely foolish. You don't meet even a single criteria for the same. Not even a single parameter I met during that process. And the competitor which I had spent few years in the company, and they met all kind of a criteria that the company was giving him. And if I would have told this to any reasonable man who are slave to their own reasoning mind and senses, that I'm targeting a management position and I've spent just a couple of months in this company, I do not meet any kind of a criteria, I would have been made a laughing stock. But only if you know your own scripture, which says, chapter 2, verse 16, we imagine ourselves as a separate beings. From that entire world of inner thoughts and object arises. What we call reality is colored by our own memory and conditioning. Then does it matter what people will say? I didn't had any kind of a doubts. Although my senses and reasoning mind were on the one side, they're completely against me. They have been conditioned on the stories and fact given to me by the world, my parents, the societies. It takes so many years to become this position. It takes so many years to become even a manager, to get maybe higher designation promotion, to get into the higher management. It takes so many years to do something. I basically inherited these conditioning, what people call as the facts of the world. I was forced onto me. These facts were forced onto me. I didn't made any kind of a facts. I have inherited them. And it conditions you, conditions me, and becomes your own memory and assumptions of your own life, and it dictates your life as well. So I tell you now, the world you see is your own belief and assumptions outpictured. But a man does not know it. The man has become the slave of his own senses and assumptions that he has inherited, not knowing that these very assumptions build his own life. How one can be really free when he's enslaved by his own senses that he completely trusts? Will there be any freedom who do not wish to leave the slavery of his own senses? There comes your own scriptures to make you free from your own slavery of your senses. You see, we are not slave of others. We are slaves of our own self only, our own assumptions about life. We have been put up to the position of slave by ourselves only. Nobody is making you slave, but our own assumptions. Our own senses and what reasonable mind says is putting us behind the bars of slavery. People say it's a reasonable thing to do. That man is reasonable. But what I share with you here is quite opposite. Reason operates by what is already known to you, or maybe you can say what has already been measured or accepted by you. It is bounded by yesterday's evidence in your senses. The logical mind says, prove it first, then I will believe. This is your logical mind says. Like, prove me first, then I'll believe you. But in this teaching, what I'm trying to teach everyone, which I'm trying to spread the word across the world, we reverse that order. We say, believe it first. The proof will follow. And this is exactly what I've done. And to the rational world, that sounds completely absurd. It is not reasonable at all. Reason demands that you adjust yourself to the facts you see. But imagination dares to say the facts will adjust themselves to you. Just what I've done. Just like my experience, facts adjusted themselves to conform what I have once felt to become the management professional. And every great breakthrough in the life has always been unreasonable. The idea that man could fly was completely unreasonable. The thought that the invisible waves in the air could carry voices across the ocean, what we now call as a telephonic conversation. To the logical mind, faith is madness. But to the awakened mind, faith is the only true reason, for it knows that the unseen is the seed of the seen. What is called reasonable nowadays is really just conformity to the past, to your senses. But creation is not born out of the conformity, it is born out of the vision itself. So here I say, coming back to the point, if physical fact can produce a psychological state, then a psychological state can equally produce a physical fact in your life. So when I was looking for this particular position and longing for the management position, I did not wait for the outer facts to change before feeling secure or successful. No. What I did was just to enter the state of which I wish to experience. I assumed it inwardly. I felt it to the very core of my being. As if it were happening right now. Not in the future, but currently, right now. Not a dream for some future day, no. But a living reality in the present. And within weeks, just within weeks, the relative physical fact appeared in my life. What I was offered that. I was offered the very management position that I was aspiring for. This is not philosophy for the sake of argument. It is the reality of the life. The psychological state in which we live does not fade away into the past. It confronts us in the future as an event. Do you hear that? The psychological state that we currently live does not fade away into the past. It confronts us again in the future as an event. What is lived within always finds its echo without. Yet I see people up and down, right and left. Yet people cling to their senses and they call themselves free, not knowing that they are enslaved by their own mind and reasoning sense. Yet Gita, the Bhagavad Gita makes it very, very, very clear. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, 6 verse, for him who has conquered his mind, the mind is the best friend. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. That is exactly what I have experienced. My mind, once an enemy filled with doubt, became my greatest ally when I chose the state of already being employed to the management position. And because what is truly felt must appear. And it did appear. This is the law of life. So if you can take something from this podcast, if you have a desire in your life, and who doesn't? It could be anything. It could be the love you're longing for, your career, the wealth, or maybe anything of this world. You remember what we have discussed here in this podcast. This is not me telling you, I'm just directing you to your own scripture. If a physical fact can produce a psychological state, then a psychological state can equally produce a physical fact in your life. You must bring that psychological state to the corresponding physical effect that you wish to experience in the present time. It is a simple thing to do. The world does not reciprocate to your efforts, but to your own psychological state. And if you have a desire to buy a home, let me consider this case. If you have a desire to buy a home, and you do not have any single paisa or penny to it, not even a financial background to buy it, not even a credit background, so what? If you know your own scripture, believe in them, not as how people believes, as what we have discussed here, and also in my previous podcast. Believe in it. That belief is exactly how it's meant to be believed. Do not believe me. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to just to take you back to yourself only. So if you have a desire to buy a home and not a single unit of money that you have, you just contemplate on the feeling that you would get if the home you wish to buy is already yours. Wouldn't it be a great achievement for you? There's a distinct feeling when we sleep at a house which is rented and sleeping in our own home. We cannot call a house a home unless we own it. So ask yourself, how would you feel if you have a home? How would you feel? Just feel if you have a home, and do not be concerned about how it's going to happen, even if you don't have money or a financial background. That's not your concern. Do not think, where will I get it? Where will I get the kind of money, or maybe home? From where the money will come? Those are the cries of your own reasonable mind. You don't need to be the slave of your own senses or reasonable mind. You just need to believe that your own scriptures, that which is felt must appear. So tonight, through this podcast, if you have a dream of maybe buying a home, and if I can tell you, if I were you, I would not sleep tonight in the rented or shared home tonight, although I will be physically, but as soon as I would be closing my eyes on my own bed in this house, I would be contemplating the feeling as if I'm already sleeping in my home, which I have bought. Physically, my body is already in the house, the rented house, but psychologically, I would be assuming that I am sleeping in my home, which I have bought, with all the feeling of ownership and proud. I'm not concerned how it's going to happen. I'm not going to become the slave of my senses or maybe reasoning mind, but I'm sleeping there as I would really sleep, as I'm literally sleeping in my home. And I go sound to sleep in that psychological state. And I would continue to do particular this thing till the psychological state in which I sleep would create a corresponding physical effect in my life. And that's my home. And if I do this day after day, night after night, the whole world will change around me to conform in which psychological state I have been living. Because I believe in my own scripture, which says that which is felt must appear. So when I look back at my entire journey, I say it was never about a job. No. Nor maybe it was about a position or title. It was about proving to myself that the unseen is greater than the seen. that the inner movement of feeling carries more weight than so-called the facts of the outer world. The world have a thing called reasonable or unreasonable. A reasonable mind would say it's completely unreasonable. It's even foolish to feel and walk in certainty of something that has no evidence, but life itself vindicated it. Because the world is the only mirror, and the mirror cannot show you the face that has already become. And this is why Gita insists in this particular thing. In the Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, 5th verse, one must lift oneself by self alone. Do not degrade yourself. The self alone is the friend of a self, and the self alone is the enemy of self. The whole world, the whole drama of life is psychological. You must conquer your mind. And the real freedom lies in the freedom from your own reasonable mind and the foundation of the senses. The very mind that binds us in a doubt and fear is the same mind that sets us free when turned towards faith and assumption. What I lived through was not a magic, not luck, not some irrational explanation. It was simply a law of being. That which is felt in the depth of imagination must sooner or later harden into fact. What I feel must appear. And so the invitation I leave with you here is not to live by the appearances of your senses, not to take cues from what has already been formed, but dare to choose your state, your psychological state, and to live from its certainty now, and just to watch as so-called impossible bends and rearranges the whole life right in front of you. And this is the secret rhythm of life, the reversible of reasoning, the law of transformation. That what you embody inwardly cannot help but express outwardly. So today in this podcast, if I have added a knowledge into your own book of knowledge about life, so that you now know more than before, then I have succeeded. So if today, through this conversation, I have placed even a single living word into book of your own knowledge, then I have done what I have came to do. For life itself is always adding to us, always expanding the inner library from which we draw our choices and our vision. And if you carry within you the truth you did not hold before, the new way of seeing yourself and the world, then I have succeeded. Because knowledge is not mere information, it is the seed of transformation. And once planted, it will continue to grow in the quiet soil of your own being until the day you find yourself living from it a very natural state. So that what I have felt must appear. If a psychological state is traced back to an event in your life, if an event can create a psychological state in your life, then a psychological state can create that particular corresponding event in your life. So until we meet next time, let's go back to ourselves only, the true self.